Hey everyone! Now that my partner has explained the DSM-5 criteria for anorexia nervosa, I'm going to introduce you to some of the therapy techniques and discuss a study that was conducted with a group of adolescents in one of the treatment options known as family-based therapy. This study was conducted to explore different treatment options for anorexia. Since anorexia typically manifests in adolescence and is a very disruptive disorder that impairs people from developing physically, socially, sexually, and emotionally, so therefore development becomes an essential theme in therapy options. First, there's adolescent-focused therapy. The theory behind this treatment is that anorexia is developed as a way to manage other development stressors. Therefore, the therapist works with the teenager and his or her parents to identify positive ways of managing stressors. Secondly, there is cognitive behavioral therapy, which also focuses on development. However, it addresses ways to become more self-sufficient, develop healthy peer relationships, and again, on how to manage those typical teenage stressors. Then there is family-based therapy. This type of therapy occurs in 3 different stages and has been shown most effective with people under the age of 18. In the first phase, the focus is about gaining weight and becoming physically and medically healthy. This is done by shifting all the client's current responsibilities to the parent and really focusing on that refeeding. In the second phase, this is where some of the responsibility is returned to the adolescent, and the client and the therapist start to address developmental difficulties and any other psychiatric conditions that may exist. Finally, in stage 3, more independence is given to the adolescent, and the therapist really guides a healthy relationship between the client and his or her parents. So now that we know a little bit more about the types of therapies that are offered for anorexia, I'm going to explain the qualitative study that I found that reviews the effectiveness of family-based therapy. So in the study, they had 12 participants and so therefore 12 corresponding parents. 11 of them were female and 1 of them was a male. The population was sought from an outpatient clinic that focuses on eating disorders. All participants in the study had successfully completed family-based therapy at least 5 months prior to participation, and again, before the study started, they were screened for any existing eating disorders. If an order did not exist, then they were allowed into the study. The participants and their family were interviewed using semi-structured face-to-face interviews, asking them about their experiences in family-based therapy and what they found most effective about this type of treatment. All of the participants were asked about their lives prior to the onset of anorexia, and all participants had described some sort of struggle with development, whether it was regulating their mood, relating to peers, or going through that awkward stage of trying to gain some independence from their parents. All participants described their identified struggle as getting worse, so whatever struggles they initially described before having anorexia, they all agreed that it got worse with the onset of anorexia. Except for now, along with their identified struggle, they started to socially isolate, especially in instances or events that involved food. Furthermore, when the parents were also interviewed about the onset of anorexia, the parents observed that their child appeared to be more isolated. It should be noted that the parents and the participants were interviewed separately, and then their interviews were analyzed for similarities and differences. In addition, the parents also noted that the teenagers did not actually engage in any type of risk-taking behavior, you know, sneaking out, drinking alcohol, things like that. So all the participants described phase 1, and remember phase 1 is when they are relieving all of their current responsibilities and giving that back to their parent, as being successful and very necessary for the treatment. They all identified that this was really helpful in them gaining weight. However, there were very mixed reviews regarding the effectiveness of phase 2 and 3, with some participants stating that they felt these phases simply did not help. That one participant even mentioned that she was motivated to get better just so she could leave treatment. This consensus appears to be that due to their need to fully depend on their parents in phase 1, and this dependence on their parents kind of aggravated those feelings that they were feeling before the onset of the anorexia, those developmental struggles, that this made it more difficult to transition into phases 2 and 3, which really guides the client into getting back into a normal teenage development phase. However, overall, the participants and their parents regarded this therapy as effective. So therefore, based on the results of the study, it may be more appropriate to incorporate adolescent-focused therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy rather than the family-based therapy with older participants. And that is because of the requirements in phase 1 of relinquishing all responsibility and developmental tasks to your parents, with older participants, especially those who have already moved out, have a job, have some sort of independence, that this would be even more difficult. So other therapies may be appropriate in that regard. Also, family-based therapy is not effective if you do not have a good support system with your parents or guardians. One of the participants actually claimed that family-based therapy was not effective for this reason, that even though she attempted to follow the therapist's recommendations of relinquishing her responsibility, that she simply could not follow through with that because her parents were not willing to support her, attend other therapy sessions, and things like that. So in my opinion, while this article was extremely informative, and I learned a lot about the different types of therapies available to people with anorexia, one huge red flag, one major glaring issue with this study was the lack of information gathered from people who still had the eating disordered cognitions, whether those people were screened for the initial study and were found to still have the eating disorder, or whether it was people who were unsuccessfully discharged from family-based therapy because they did not complete it. I think it would be really crucial to get feedback from those participants, mainly because we want to find out, why did they stop going? Why was this not effective for you? Have you tried any other types of treatments? I think it's important to kind of get both sides of the issues rather than just hearing from the people who completed the program and then stated their opinions about the therapy. So then finally, this concludes the summary of the article, but I want to take note of the last slide. You will see the 3 national organizations that were actually developed to help individuals with anorexia. And these national web resources are the National Eating Disorder Association, the National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders, and Eating Disorder Hope. And many of these websites have hotlines where people can call in if they are experiencing any of the symptoms or want to receive help for their eating disorder and do not know where their local treatment center is or if their insurance is accepted and things like that. So these are some really great resources to look into. Oh, and I forgot to mention that these organizations actually work to bring awareness about eating disorders, which is incredibly important so that people, especially young people, are educated about looking for the signs and symptoms of anorexia. So with that, I really want to thank you for taking the time to watch my video.